I still have fun playing, listening to, recording with cassette tapes. I've had a lot of bad luck buying decks over the years, so I thought I'd make a quick video showing you what I think you shouldn't buy if you're a beginner and just getting into cassette tapes, what decks not to buy, but also this favorite deck of mine that I've purchased over the years that I think is perfect for beginners. So stay tuned, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the Nakamichi CR-1A. Okay, so it's 2022 and you want to listen to cassette tapes. I am not going to judge you. I grew up listening to cassettes. I still listen to cassettes. I still buy cassettes when I find them. I even still make mixtapes and record on tapes. So if you're a beginner and you're interested in getting into listening and making cassette tapes, buying a cassette deck can be a little intimidating. I've made a lot of mistakes over the years, so I thought I'd make a quick video just showing you my new favorite beginner deck. It's a beginner budget deck, okay? All the tape aficionados out there, there's going to be features on here that aren't available on the more expensive decks, and that's okay for beginners, right? Just calm down. I want to talk to you a little bit about this beginner deck and then tell you a little bit about what I think you shouldn't buy to begin. So let me show you what I think you shouldn't buy, and that's a deck like this, which is the dual cassette deck. It's got the decks on either side. This is a Techniques model. I've had Techniques, I've had Sony, I've had Denon, I've had Pioneer, I've had Yamaha. They always break. I don't know what to tell you. I wish I had I wish I had like a reason why they always break. They just always break for some reason. I just think that having two decks in one machine it makes sense because you can dub from one side to the other, but at the end of the day, like, they just don't work properly. They don't sound great, and they're gonna break on you. So they're cheap, but save your money and upgrade and buy something a little bit different. So if you're not going to get a dual deck like that, what I would suggest if you're a beginner is this Nakamichi CR-1A. When I started researching Nakamichi decks, I was a little frustrated by how expensive they were, because you tend to find like the Dragon and some of the RX models that are really, really expensive. But I stumbled on this CR-1A. It's just a simple, easy to use, one deck, two head cassette deck. And I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna pick this up and give it a try. And listen, I'm not lying to you. This cassette deck sounds amazing. It sounds great. I can play cassettes and record cassettes on here, play them back, and I've had people tell me that they sound as good as CDs. So once you really kind of learn how to make a great tape, even on a budget deck like this Nakamichi CR-1A, you know, you're going to be really, really surprised. And you can find these on eBay for anywhere between $100 and $200. So if you're a beginner and you're interested in finding a great sounding budget deck, right, this is definitely going to have some features. It's not three heads. There's no bias adjustment. We'll talk about that in a minute. But if you're just looking to get started in cassettes and you're kind of confused about a deck that you should buy, definitely consider the Nakamichi CR-1A. Now, I'm going to grab the camera and run through some of the features and show you why I think this would be a great model for you. Okay, so I thought I'd grab my camera and show you a little bit up close some of my favorite things about the Nakamichi CR-1A. Hi. Kind of see me right there on these 80s, 90s black electronics. Hello. Also, just everybody relax. This is stacked just for demonstration. I don't keep it this way. Nothing is going to explode in this video. You'll be all right, okay? We're just going to stack it, and then I'll unstack it. You don't have to comment below about how I shouldn't stack things, okay? All right, so now that we've got all that out of the way, the Nakamichi CR-1A was manufactured between 1988 and 1990. So it's got that wonderful, beautiful black plastic look. As you'll notice up here, it's just a two-head cassette deck. So it's got one head for recording and playback, and then another head specifically just for erasing. I have a couple other three-head decks, and as I'll tell you a little bit later, I've really just enjoyed the sound and recording qualities of this two-head deck just as much as the three-head for a fraction of the price. So part of the reason why I recommend this to folks. But back to some of the features. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you about the thing that annoys me the most about this deck, and that is the location of these buttons. So the power button's here, right? Eject button there. But guess what I do every single time I want to turn this unit on? I don't know. Seems like they would have put those in different spots, but they didn't. 1/4-inch headphone jack if you want to just be able to listen to headphones straight from the deck while it's playing. I do like it has like this little green light back there in the back. It's pretty cool. Okay, let's talk about the different types of tapes that it can play and record. So there, it can do type 1, type 2, and type 4. And you select these buttons when you're recording only. So something to point out is that these buttons are not needed during playback, only when you're recording a tape. Some of the other buttons up here, you've obviously got your counter and your reset button for the counter. You've got all your normal functions here. I won't go through those. You've got this auto repeat button. So when that's selected, the cassette will play, and when it gets all the way to the end, it'll automatically rewind back and play again. Same side, it doesn't flip it or anything, but when that's selected, it just automatically rewinds, plays again. I'm gonna not select that because that's not something I generally enjoy. There's also a timer switch here. Just to be honest with you, I don't use that, so but if you need a timer switch, it's there. EQ switch down here. And it also has Dolby, so you've got Dolby B and C, so you can turn it off or on. You can see, right, B and then C. Okay, I've recorded a lot over the last couple years, especially during the pandemic. Just kind of like, yeah, on Dolby. I just don't ever really use it. I think I can make a pretty good sounding tape without it, so I just leave it off. This MPX filter, excuse me, this button is fairly dated, and I'll tell you why. This is mostly to filter out sound you don't want on FM broadcast, and I'll be honest with you, I don't even listen to the radio, so there's no reason why I would record it since I don't listen to it. Excuse me. So I just always leave that off. Wouldn't matter anyway because I'm not recording, right? Okay, so your button over here, it's kind of a dual knob, right? So you can adjust the left and right speaker balance when you're recording using this inner knob, and then this outer knob will, that's how you control the recording of the input signal by using these meters here. And I'm gonna actually hook up something here and show you what Nakamichi's recommended limits are for tapes, but this is the button we'll use when we get to that part. So pretty basic deck overall. Those are the main functions, but again, this button here, come on guys, power down, eject there, I don't know. That's really the only functional thing that gets on my nerves about this deck. So let me hook up a source here, and let's do some recording, and I'll show you the recommended levels that Nakamichi suggests when recording. Okay, let's talk about the recording levels here that Nakamichi recommends. So as we know, there are different level of tape types. There's 1, 2, 4. So for 1 and 2, they actually recommend the same setting. And just to show you here, I've got a type 2 tape. Type 2. This is actually a used tape that I'm going to record over, but anyway. And just for sake of ease, I've got an iPad, excuse me, running into this, and kind of give us an idea of what we're working with here. So obviously this is our input knob here, so this is going to change the levels that we get there on the meters. So Nakamichi recommends that recording on type 1 and type 2 tapes, so in this instance I would want to change that to type 2, they suggest you push the level all the way to 3, right? It's kind of close enough for this video, but you want it to be hitting level 3. Now, well, I wanted to eject and I hit power. That's funny. Okay, so, however, if we use a metal tape, and it's not metal because it says Judas Priest, it's metal because it's type 4 metal. This is actually, I got this tape in a box. Judas Priest Painkiller Tour 1990. I actually need to listen to this. See if it even sounds good, because, you know, if it doesn't, I may just record over it. I don't know. I may keep it too. Anyway, if I was using that tape, I would want to push the levels here with my knob all the way to 7. Look at that. Right? So that's what Nakamichi recommends. Type 1, type 2, push up to level 3, and type 4 metal tapes goes up to 7. Too bad the metal tapes don't go to 11, but that's just the obvious dad joke that I could think of here. So anyway, that's how to record when you're using this deck and different type of tapes. And if you're interested to see what the rear of the unit looks like, this is it. Pretty simple. So for your connections, you're going to use this output. You're going to use RCA cables to plug into the rear of your amplifier. So these are going out into your amplifier, and then your input is going to be whatever source you want to record. So in that instance, I had some RCA cables plugged into my iPad, and I was going in there and using that signal. On other amplifiers, you can come out of the amplifier and into here so that you could record multiple sources. Think like CD player, turntable, you know, a DAC, you know, anything from that you could stream there. So that's where you're going to want to plug in your source that you want to record, and then this is where you're going to plug in your cables to come out to your amplifier so you can listen to music, either pre-recorded tapes or just regular commercially released tapes. I forgot to mention one thing, and that is that this is, of course, the CR-1A, but Nakamichi actually also released a model up called the CR-2A, and I think there's even a CR-3A. But let me explain the main difference with the 2A is that right around here you're going to have a bias adjustment knob, and that's going to let you adjust the bias when you're recording on your cassette tapes. If you're not familiar with bias adjustment, if you're just a beginner, look up videos on how to adjust the bias on your tapes. It's pretty interesting, and it's great for when you're using different brands of tapes and metal or type 2, whatnot. But you know, if you just have this model, it's a great beginner's model, and so bias is probably a little bit over the heads of sort of a beginner. But I don't use bias adjustment on this deck, and I have made tapes, I've recorded tapes with it that sound just as good as a 3-head deck with a bias adjustment, or a 2-head deck with a bias adjustment. So don't stress out if you don't have the bias adjustment. You're going to pay probably about $100, $150 more for that feature on any of these decks. Meanwhile, something like this goes probably between $100 and $200 bucks. Okay, there's 2 other things to note when you're buying this deck. The first is that since it's, you know, made in the 80s and the 90s, that it's going to be inevitable that the belts go out. And I've actually changed the belts myself on this deck, and I actually documented the process and made a blog post about it. So I'll link to that in the description below. And if you are willing to take your time and remove a lot of screws, you know, it's not the hardest thing that you could ever do if you've got a little bit of experience kind of working on electronics. There's plenty of other videos out on YouTube too that will show you how to do that. The only other thing that I would recommend is just make sure when you buy this, sometimes people say the belts don't work, and it's actually that the belts are fine, but the motors inside need cleaning, and I have yet to be able to figure out how to clean those and get them running again. And I have one unit like this that needs that, and I'm probably just going to send it off to someone to actually do. So I tried, I took everything apart, cleaned the motor, it still didn't work. So just be careful when you're buying it. If you want to buy one that's broken for parts, you want to make sure that it is the belts and not just needing to clean out those motors. Okay, so there you have it. I've gushed enough about the Nakamichi CR-1A. Again, if you're interested in how this deck sounds, I've got a further, more detailed blog post below that I'll link to in this video. I'll also link to the blog post showing you how to change the belts if that's something you're interested in trying to do on a CR-1A as well. But again, whenever I have friends that ask me about, you know, a good beginner cassette deck and they're showing me some of the cheaper dual decks, I just tell them, don't bother with those. Get the Nakamichi CR-1A instead. I promise you'll love it, especially if you're just getting into cassettes. If you enjoyed this video, press the like button. It just goes around to other people who enjoy vintage audio, cassettes, records, and those sorts of things. Thank you for watching today.